Want to expand the reach of your content? Start a podcast. Feature industry experts on your show and leverage the influence and reach of your guests to grow your brand. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Leo Giel. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at YouAppi. Leo, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, Logan. Thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
It is a pleasure to have you on, sir. Love some of the stuff that you guys are doing in the video space. And we're going to be talking about some of the trends there and some practical applications for B2B marketers as they look at the direction that video and video consumption is going. Before we do that, let's back up for folks who aren't familiar with you. Give us a little bit about your background and what you're doing on the team at YouAppi these days.
Yeah, sure. My name's Leo Giel. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at YouAppi. Actually, I started my journey about a decade ago when something called text messaging was innovative. And I remember I was dating my wife at the time. She wasn't my wife. And she would send me these messages, and I would have to click on a button, read them, and think, wow, man, this is really annoying. And why doesn't she just pick up the phone? And I would call her up, and she would be like, why don't you just respond with a text? And I would say, well, that's so much work. Fast forward a couple years, she would call me, I would hit decline, and then I would send her a message. So it's pretty funny. And then, yeah, it's pretty funny, actually. And then I was in Israel with a friend of mine, and he parked his car, and he pulled out his phone. Back then, there were flip phones. I don't think there were smartphones. He sent a couple of words to what's called a short code. And I said, wow, Zach, what are you doing? He said, oh, I just paid for parking. And I thought to myself, wow, this is big. This is so big, and I got to be part of it somehow, some way. And ever since that day, I've been fully devoted to mobile and how it affects people, brands, and how do you bring those two worlds together. Mm-hmm. So that's a little background on myself.
Yeah, I love that. A little personal story in one of the trends of everything going mobile we're going to be talking about today. You know, myself, I'm a millennial, but I can still remember the days of, when it was cool if you actually had a flip phone that could send photos, and the days of, when we posted to Twitter by sending it to a short code as opposed to there actually being an app that we can do. And today we struggle to even, remember those times. So tell us a little bit more before we get into today's conversation on video, what you and the team at YouAppi are up to these days.
Yeah, sure. So back then when I was really focused on mobile and how it related to consumers, as I mentioned, you were texting folks. And then if you were a consumer and you wanted to engage with a brand, and I was working with guys like Lil Wayne, Lady Gaga, Justin Bieber, and I didn't even know who they were. I hired a young girl to tap me when it was a good brand. But you would, even The Secret, Rhonda Byrne, The Secret was amazing. But if you wanted to get their content, whether it was an inspirational message, whether it was music, whether it was a video, you texted that short code and you paid money through the carrier, and it sent you something back in return. And then this thing called apps came along, the app revolution. And I remember everyone talked to me, oh, this is a fad, it's going to go away. And I was thinking, I don't know, man, this is pretty cool. And it's kind of like a portal on your phone. It's very nice, clean, and sexy. You just push this button and it takes you into the world of the brand, and you can shop, buy, whatever you want to do. And I got really consumed by mobile apps and how to make money from there, how to make consumers more engaged with your mobile app or your brand, so to speak. And I just kind of kicked it off like, all right, so we got to make this more engaging. How do you do that? And then how do you make money for the publisher? So you had to do things like advertising. Advertising back then was more static banner advertising. But the problem was it was more boring. So we started thinking about ways to make advertising more exciting. You had to implement things like video, but video was a problem because it was a larger file and it took up a lot of space and it was load times and the infrastructure wasn't there and it was not such a good experience. But over the years, as technology kind of caught up, we started getting better at it. And now in today's age, when we do research to make sure we're going in the right direction, following the data and bringing what the audiences want, mobile video in general is number one media they're looking for. So YouAppi, which is really a mobile advertising company, it started from performance, is there all the way. We jumped in this year. We've been working on things for the last few years, and we're counting on it to be the future of the business.
Awesome. So as you and I were talking a little bit offline, Leo, you mentioned some of the market research you guys have done around video that plays into, this trend that we've all seen over the last several years of the world going mobile. So can you speak to some of those findings that really led you guys to have everything roll into video and where that's going, especially on mobile platforms?
Yeah, the number one thing that pointed, like, it was like I walked through Times Square and all the signs were saying video will have more usage and will surpass TV in minutes in 2019. That means more consumers will engage with mobile to consume content in television in 2019. And for me, growing up watching TV, actually, I think we had black and white when I was a kid. I'm 42. That was just a phenomenal experience, knowing that I'm in a space that's going to overtake linear television. And then to find out in the US alone, video will be a $135 billion industry. That was mind blowing. And then 3/4 of the world mobile data traffic will be mobile video this year. Actually, it will be video. But when I'm thinking about video, I'm thinking mainly mobile because I have 4 kids at home. I can't get them to sit down and watch TV with me. If I want to hang out with them, someone's got to be on a device. And they're watching other kids do things online and watching user-generated content. They're not watching television shows. And the shows they do watch are on demand. So when I look at the world, and I have kids from 2 to 12, 4 amazing children, they are always on their phone, always on a device consuming video.
Yeah, I definitely think you're not alone there. It sounds like a common household scenario these days. One of the things you touched on, Leo, as we were chatting offline a little bit before this, was that one of the trends you see in video is that we'll talk a little bit about duration and some applications there, but you mentioned something that I thought was really telling. You mentioned if you're using video, especially in an advertising format, the creative has to be good, right? I've seen people, especially a lot of B2B marketers are active on LinkedIn. And we did a previous episode on this that actually got a lot of engagement. And basically we were talking about some of the ways people were using video because everyone saw this trend that you're talking about. Video is what people want and those sorts of things. But they were putting out really bad video that was actually, in our opinion, hurting their brand more than it was helping. And so tell us a little bit about, your perspective there on where does the value of creative fit with this medium of where people are consuming video?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So many times, and just so you know, YouAppi works with the world's leading brands all over the world. And in their defense, they've been operating in a world where they're putting video on television, online, etc. But when we're trying to convey the power of in-app advertising, that means you're inside of an app and you're seeing an ad of another brand. It's related to the profile of you based on data and all this stuff we gather about you. It's anonymous, but it talks about who you are and who you might be. And we test those assumptions with the right advertising. But the problem is a lot of folks will send us video that may be created for online. Now, the experience online versus on mobile is completely different. You might sit through an online video, maybe a minute or two, but when you're on your mobile phone, you have these little bits and bytes and these little periods of time for just a few minutes between meetings or when you're out with your friends, and you need to be able to speak to that consumer, tell a story in 15 seconds or less. That's what our research shows. I personally think it needs to be 6 to 10 seconds. Now, the challenge is a brand to tell a story in less than 10 seconds is super complicated. So what we do a lot of times is we work with large brands, and for free we'll build the creatives. And their concern always is that, well, it's not going to be on brand. So we work closely with their brand teams, making sure the video's on brand. And then we deploy that, and we're able to see amazing results. I think one of the world's largest brands, we outperform their competitors by 5,000% because we build these really unique creatives. And it's also super important because if you think about how we work, we're in thousands of apps all over the world, different cultures, different languages. So we need to build content relevant to the localized culture and the localized content. And we need to reach audience inside of certain verticals. So how you message somebody inside of one app versus another app, in one country versus another country, in one language versus another language is super complicated. And you can't deploy one online video to everyone all over the world that's very long and tells one message and expect good results. So it's a different world we live in. It's a mobile first world. It's a completely different strategy, and you need to get the right partners.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are phenomenal results, Leo. You mentioned 5,000% better results with that campaign versus their closest competitor. You mentioned duration being important. You mentioned segmentation based on geography, demographic, those sorts of things. What are some of the other elements that you mentioned, maybe in this scenario or another, where you guys helped brands execute better creative in their video? I think there are a lot of B2B marketing leaders out there and teams who see this, and they see this challenge you talk about. How do we tell a compelling story in such a short amount of time? In your opinion, what are some of the other components they can be thinking about, some of the boxes they can check to know that they're heading in the right direction to create good creative elements with video with these constraints that they have?
Well, first of all, my advice would be to make sure you hire some folks with the right experience. It's not something you can just jump into. I remember early days, probably 8 years ago, I was trying to use mobile to drive consumers into major retailers. And to be honest with you, I never thought we would do it. We were just doing it to be a good partner to a large brand. And actually, I put my product hat on. Not that I have much of a product hat, but I put one on and try to figure out how to get folks to go to a brand that maybe my mom would shop at and get them in store. Okay. And we were able to do it. We were able to do it, to my surprise, and we got better at it. And we were outperforming some digital channels. And the way we did it was purely through manipulation of creative colors, putting a purse rather than a blouse, size of copy, shortening the message, telling a short, quick story. And that is what turned me on to this a long time ago. And then I fought in YouAppi for a few years and took quite some time. And then we built out a full creative services group. And this allows us to help folks that may not have the experience or may understand the need for such creative. And I can tell you another big retailer, they were working with some of our other products. So if you think about YouAppi, our mission is really to bring brands and consumers together. And we do that through a variety of ways, whether you're a first-time user and you just want their app installed on your phone and so they can buy their products, no problem, or retarget them if maybe they've left your brand and started to explore other brands, or announce new products through just brand video and brand marketing, or connecting with them at home on their couch through a connected TV experience, or even finding lookalike audiences on social media outlets and channels. So we cover the entire gamut, and then we build all that creative to support all those different channels across all those different verticals. It's a pretty powerful experience.
Yeah.
So they were launching some new products, and they still had that old mindset in place. So what we did is we were taking them to a social media channel, and imagine if you want to connect with a consumer on Snapchat, the message is way different than if you were trying to connect someone on ESPN. Snapchat is the super short stories, user-generated stuff. So we were able to develop some creative that kind of felt like it came from the consumer. And that was well received, because the worst thing someone wants to do is be advertised to. So if you kind of make that native experience feel come through in your advertising efforts to the consumer, and the brand almost feels like it's coming through the consumer, it doesn't feel like advertising, it feels like value. And we had some amazing results, and we continue to do so. So I think that's another takeaway for your audience. I think rather than trying to bring advertising to consumers, try to bring value and try to have your audiences speak that you're connecting through, have them speak to the consumer. So that would be a good goal or a good takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've touched on duration, segmentation, having the right team in place. You touched on there in that I took from what you said, Leo, was getting very particular about the details because you realize, how tight and succinct your window is of opportunity. So really not letting just okay happen in those cases, because those little changes, those little levers can actually drive results quite a bit. And something that we're very passionate about here in any sort of content that you're putting out is, consistently leading with value. I think those are great things for B2B marketers to be thinking about as they look to leverage the power of video moving forward. Anything else you want to leave listeners with today, Leo, as we wrap things up? Trends you see coming in video, or anything else that listeners should be thinking about as it pertains to video, or specifically mobile video coming down the line?
Yeah, I think number one is don't be lazy. And what I mean by that is, don't just produce a couple of creatives and let them run. I produce thousands of creatives to kick off campaigns for each of my partners. I try to produce more creatives than I can just because I know the value. And then we do creative refreshes every week, every couple of days. And again, that helps touch on that point of not making it feel like advertising, making it feel more like value to the consumer. And also I'd say, and the other thing to make sure that you're very much thinking about is connected TV. As I mentioned before, consumers are more and more adopting connected TV. I have a family of 6. I have 6 televisions in the house, and we have no linear television. Everyone's connected to the internet through their TV. And when they do watch TV, it is connected, and you need to have your brand there without question. And if I have it my way, YouAppi will be the leader in the connected TV space, and one day we'll be bringing performance-oriented advertising to connected television.
I love it. A little bit of a look forward there to close things out, Leo. That's fantastic, man. Well, if anybody listening to this, Leo, would like to stay connected with you, learn more about YouAppi, or reach out to you and ask any follow-up questions, what's the best way for them to connect with you and find YouAppi?
Sure. Yeah, they can reach out to me directly at leo@youappi.com. That's YOUAPPI.com, leo@youappi.com. Or they can find me on LinkedIn, and or just go to www.youappi.com.
I love it. Well, Leo, thanks again. Appreciate a little bit of backstory and looking ahead at the future of video today. Thank you for sharing your insights with listeners today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Logan. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. You know, all those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.